Thanks, Dustin. All right, welcome everyone. How you guys doing? Okay, one person's okay, another person's all right, and the rest of you are silent. I'm cool with it. All right, look, I just want to point out this real quick. Who was here last week? Yeah, isn't this great? Our own in-house Josh Anderson, he did that. If you weren't here last week, we had someone come up and paint this. They were painting a picture of that plant before that plant started dying. And he was doing it while I spoke. And this is the finished product. I think it's pretty awesome, so. Good job, Josh. All right, we are in the middle of the E3 process, the vision of our church. As you guys see, that is it right there. E3, encountering God, encountering others, and encountering the world. And while they're going through it quickly, as I told you guys last week, we're taking our time because we want to build a good foundation. And so that's what we're working on right now. And last week, we started with encountering God by starting in verse 20 of the first chapter of Romans. And it said that for his invisible attributes, that is God's, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world and the things that have been made. And I talked about how that Greek word, that things that have been made, is actually one word in the Greek, and it's poema, which we get our modern day word poem from. And I talked about how creation is God's poetry to us. It's his beautiful description of who he is, of his character. That he wanted to reveal his glory in a way that would cause us to go, wow. That would cause us to just stand back and be in awe of what he's capable of his perfection. That he didn't just do creation for the fun of it, because he was bored one day and he's got an artistic side and just felt like throwing it out there. He did it so that we would stare at it, so that we would marvel at it, see how good of a creator he really is. And we concluded from that God desires our worship. That's a pretty big concept, actually. That's not in here. But if you think about it, that's a really big concept. God desires your worship. You, right there. He wants it. He loves it. It's not that he just demands it like, hey, you, right there. Kind of like if you guys remember Hook, the movie Hook, you know? And the one guy wasn't like, harumph or whatever to Captain Hook, and he's like, that man. Or maybe I'm mixing up two movies. I think that's Blazing Saddles. Anyways, I didn't get a harumph out of that man, you know, and they make him harumph. It is Blazing Saddles. It's the same idea. It's not, God's not up there going, I didn't get an amen out of that person. Someone jab them. I want an amen. It's that it's more relational. He doesn't need our worship. He just desires it. He desires our love. But what we don't know, what we didn't bring up last week, is that no matter what, everyone in here is worshiping. Everyone in the world today is worshiping. They are engaging in a worship. But the misfortune of the creation story, and this is what we're going to go into today, is that God isn't the object of everyone's worship. And part of this talk is that I want to eradicate this idea that we have about sin, that we actually, I believe, in the church are responsible for creating a lot of very unbiblical and wrong ideas about sin. If you ask most people, like if I were to go around the room and be like, what is sin? You know, what is sin? You guys would probably quote from me a Bible verse, but maybe we'd know, maybe we wouldn't know. But probably man on the street quiz, we'd ask, and they would probably name 6 of the 10 commandments, and maybe not all 6 of them, but it would be something to the effect, well, sin is murder, and sin is covet. I don't know what that is, but you can't do that. Your neighbor's wife, don't covet her. and it's stealing, and it's lying. Sin is stuff like that. And I don't want to say that it's not. I just think that's a very petty misunderstanding of what sin really is. And because of that, we've created this mentality of these things are wrong. These things in the church are bad. We don't do these. If you're a Christian, you don't sin. And so we end up creating this kind of this name, this way that we tag the people around us who don't join us in church. They're sinners. Those people are sinners. They do A, B, and C. But if you've really hung out with your non-Christian friends, your non-church friends, like I was hanging out with some non-church friends last night, and I just walked away from it going, I really like these people. And if you've ever thought about it, like, why shouldn't these people go to heaven? If it's all about being bad and good, why shouldn't these people go to heaven? And I'm sure everyone's had that thought, and you might have convinced yourself by now that it has something to do with their lifestyle. Well, they can't go to heaven because they drink. Christians don't get drunk, and I don't get drunk. They have a destructive lifestyle. They like to smoke. They're addicted to stuff. They sleep with people before they get married. Oh, have you ever heard them? They tell naughty jokes. I get embarrassed. That's why they're not going to heaven. But if you're a real human being and you're not an alien, okay, you're not a little green man, you might have actually had the thought that, but they're good people, though. Okay, yeah, maybe they do this a little bit more than I do, but they're good people. Or maybe if you're really honest, you might have had the thought that sometimes they're actually better people than you are. I do. I don't mean that in a condemning way. I have that thought. A lot of times you see people who don't go to church and they love more. They accept more. People who are a little more on the edge of society, a lot of times non-church people are much more welcoming. They don't put restrictions on who they love and who they don't love. A lot of times non-church people have more joy. They have less hypocrisy. Their just presence a lot of times makes people feel better, while sometimes us who are in church, our presence makes people feel worse. You guys know what I'm talking about? So why should these people be called sinners and we get to be called saints? See, in essence, this really comes down to the very nature of mankind, of humans. It's really interesting. I was watching a thing called the TED Talks, and it's a podcast that if you're into that, it's a video podcast, and they take speakers from this conference that happens once a year over in California, and they get like the greatest minds, the people who are on the cutting edge of what they do, and most of the time it's technology. But they had Billy Graham on, and he brought up an interesting question to them. And actually, this is why he was invited, was to pose this question. That if you look around, we're doing great things with technology. We're curing diseases that couldn't be cured before. People can live longer. We're able to talk with people clear across the world and break down walls through the internet. And there's just amazing technological advances that's happening. And it's all through stuff we're doing. But man's character is not advancing. Because along with the advancements in technology come the advancements in how to kill people. We're getting better at killing each other. Okay, before the turn of the 20th century, it was pretty much like, you did the stand in line thing, and then you got down and you redid the gun while they got a chance to shoot at you. And then when their turn was over, you picked yours back up and you shot back at them, and it was kind of inefficient. But it was better than centuries before them when all they did was hurled stones at each other. But then at the turn of the century, we invented this thing called mustard gas, where you could just drop a mustard gas bomb and just make people miserable all around until they just die in a hole. And that wasn't good enough. No, that wasn't good enough. We had to find ways to put a machine in your hand that shot bullets faster than just bang, 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 bang. I mean, it was just like da-da-da-da-da-da, and you could just take out people like that. And bombs that were much more effective. You could just annihilate whole cities without ever entering them on the ground. Our technology advanced. And then we came up with this amazing thing, this just energy. We did something that was just radical with an atom, something that we can't see, and we created the nuclear bomb. That we could just make people miserable in one push of a button. And now we're really good to where we can just release a disease. We've learned how to tweak nature and really, really we could take out the world just like that with a smallpox virus. That Albert Einstein, when he was talking about some of the work he was doing in nuclear physics, and people were amazed at him. It was said of him that he didn't have a degree, and it was said that he said that, oh, well, I don't have a degree because there's no one qualified to give me one. And he said, it's easier for me to denature plutonium than to denature the evil spirit of man. He said, nuclear bombs don't scare me. It's the people who have them that scare me. It's mankind and what they want to do with them that scare me. The whole point is that while we advance, our nature and our character is not advancing. And if you've grown up in the church, you've been a part of the behavior modification. All right? This is where they try to stop that evil nature in us. This is where they try to sit you down and teach you the right way to do things. I see it all the time. My office is right next to DJ, who does the high school ministry. And parents are continually calling him and coming into his office, and they're saying things like, my kid is drinking and it's your fault. And he's like, how's that my fault? And they're like, well, you're just not preaching against alcohol well enough. You need to preach against alcohol better. Or, my daughter's making really bad boyfriend choices. You need to do a purity talk. And he's like, I have. Well, you need to do it better. If you've grown up in the church, you look back at your middle school and high school years, and most of it was spent just telling you how to stay away from sin, how to not be an evil person. And the sad thing is that it's failing. It's not working. They found that teens who make abstinent pledges, who get together in maybe a conference or in their classroom or whenever it's discussed, like in their youth group, and they make a pledge to be abstinent till marriage, they find that these pledges postpone sex 18 months, that their counterparts who didn't pledge have sex, generally lose their virginity 18 months sooner. And so, hey, it's 18 months. There's a year and a half there of success. But what's really upsetting is that in the end of the 18 months, these teens end up engaging in the same amount of sex. And furthermore, is that they're 4 to 5 times more likely to become pregnant and 4 to 5 times more likely to have an abortion. Not because they're 4 to 5 more times likely to become pregnant, but because of the pledge and the embarrassment and the way that they are afraid of what people are going to think if they try to have this baby and if someone finds out, because all the pressure's been put on them. And I'm not arguing, I'm not going to go into a policy on how we should sexually educate kids. I have no clue. I'm an idiot as far as that goes. But what I'm trying to point out is for whatever reason, the strategy is failing. And I think this stems from a misdiagnosis in the real problem of what is going on, of what sin is. I believe, and it's what we're going to go into today, is that sin is more about what you aren't doing than the things that you are doing. That sin is more about what you're refusing to do than the things that you're stumbling into and the things that result from the initial what you aren't doing, if that makes any sense. So last week we did this Romans 1:20, and now I want to bring it into context for us. I want to bring it into context because the verse is so awesome on its own. Like, if we could just take the verse and just move it out of the chapter, like, we could champion this verse. Yay, God, he's made an artwork for me, and it's called creation, and he loves me, and he wants my worship, and, and we could do this every week, and we'd come out all candy sprinkled, like, this was so nice, sprinkle more on me. But I purposely left it out of the context so that we could hit the context this week. That we're not just going to pull this verse out and make ourselves feel good. That we're going to back up 2 verses, and if you have your Bibles, open them up, and I'm going to read. And I'm going to start in verse 18 of chapter 1 of the book of Romans. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. So great. All right, last week we went from beautiful poetry, and now we're in the wrath of God. All right, going downhill. Here we go. For what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world and the things that have been made. So, now we are without excuse. For although they knew God, they did not honor him as God, and they did not give thanks to him. But they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they ended up becoming fools. And they exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man and birds and animals and reptiles. See, last week I tried to paint a picture for you, no pun intended, of how God has just been screaming out to us and just loving on us and wanting us. And I wanted to paint this picture, and it's true. And I wanted to bring us all into this, that we would see it and go, yes, I want to respond to that. Yes, let's have the world respond to that. That's awesome. But now I want you to see the tragedy of what's actually happened. That although we know God, we do not honor him as God, and we don't give thanks to him. That we've blown God off. We've just said, yeah, nice artwork, buddy. I don't really care. I'm going to kind of go do my own thing. Not really into that. Not what I'm so concerned about, God. Sorry. I got to thinking about this. I was like, I wasn't born a Christian. It's not like I was born and I came out of the womb and they were like, psh, and I was like, praise Jesus. It didn't happen that way. So I think this thing's lying because I didn't know God. No way. No way I didn't know God. Because I remember in my walk, there was a time when I was awakened to the truth that before, like, I didn't really know him. But then all of a sudden, like, scales off my eyes, I was like, whoa, this is really cool, and I started chasing after him. But I swear, before I was ignorant, right? What's actually happening, and if you guys remember last week, that God has put eternity in our hearts. And that was something we talked about, is that we were born. But that what's going on here is that there's something in us, and it starts from the very beginning of humanity. There's something in us that yes, we have eternity in our hearts, but we refuse to seek him. And so I can look back and I can think, actually, there was a part of me that just knew there was something bigger going on, that knew that God existed. But for some reason, I did not want to submit to him. I did not want to give thanks to him. I didn't want to honor him, that's for sure. But that things just kept popping up in my life. And maybe you guys know, maybe your story is the same, that there's just something that just, you don't know what it is. It just drags you into it. You're just like, what was that, man? There was something that just kept on me and kept on me and kept on me until finally it broke me and I submitted. A great example of this is there's a huge, atheist biologist. Like he's out, like he's all about atheist evolution. Like he really wants to promote it. And he's quoted as saying, living systems give the appearance of having been designed for a purpose. And this was when he was looking at how the bacteria, how the little tail on the bacteria, and actually they don't have just one, they have many all around them, how it propelled them, and the way this mechanism worked just off of simple chemical reactions, and it almost worked like the engine of a car. And he looked at it, and he had all these, this is right when intelligent design was really popular, and he's like, yeah, living systems give the appearance of having been designed for a purpose. But he said, basically, appearances are deceiving. Okay, it might look that way, but it's deceiving. He says, so much do they look like they're designed for a purpose that some people, most people, think that they are designed, but the people are wrong. And, okay, we laugh. I'm not trying to pick a fight. It is kind of funny, but I'm not trying to pick a fight because he backed it up then with all the reasons why he thought it was what he believed. But Francis Crick, the discoverer of DNA, who is also a staunch atheist, after discussing what he discovered and how complex it was, the DNA molecule, that it's twisted in this helix, and that it requires a certain chemical to come in, and all the genes are put together by hydrogen bonds. And that all of them together are like a zipper. And that they're really strong together. And so it requires a chemical to come down and literally unzip the DNA structure. And it's just amazing because these are just chemicals that are all doing this at the right time for the right purpose. And that's what causes life to go on and humans to grow and every little cell to split. I mean, and it just amazed him. And he said, but biologists must constantly keep in mind, as in constantly, as in always, as in make sure you're telling yourself, biologists, that no matter what you look at, make sure you tell yourself that what they see was not designed, but evolved. See, I'm not here to argue creationism or evolution or even say, hey, let's compromise it, theistic evolution, okay? That way you can have your thing, I can have my thing. I don't want to do that. That's such a proxy war for me that I don't want to get into it. But what I want you to see is that there are people who are looking at the things that have been made, the poema of God, and they're going, I refuse to give credit to the Maker. I refuse to honor the Creator. And this is what is so upsetting to God. Because God doesn't want scientists to give up. He's not like, give up your science, look how amazing I am, give up your science. He wants the science to look at the scientists to look at this stuff and just end up going, wow, God is so amazing. This is too complex. There's got to be a God, and He's got to be really smart. Really, really smart. See, God's put eternity in our hearts, yet we search for a way to explain it off, to not include God. And what happens as a result, it says, we become futile in our thinking. We become darkened in our hearts. Now, darkened doesn't mean evil, like Dungeons and Dragons, and you're now an orc because you're on the dark side, or you're Vader and you can choke someone. It doesn't mean darkened like that. Okay, it's not this like white and dark and like the bad guy's always wearing dark. It's not like that. It's as if the more we refuse to give honor to God, He takes the light switch and it just dims. Or we take the light switch in our minds and it just starts to dim. And the more we look, and the harder we look, the less we see because it starts dimming on us. And it gets to the point where we just can't see reality. Where no matter what we look at, we're in darkness and we're squinting and we're not really seeing it in its full reality. And that's the immediate result of turning away from God. It's not like, for they knew God, they did not honor Him or give thanks to Him, and they all became murderers and threw big orgies and played beer pong every day. No. it says that they quit seeing God clearly. Ephesians 4:8 kind of says the same thing. It says, people who are alienated from God are alienated because of ignorance, due to a hardened heart. See the progression. Alienated. Why are we alienated? Because we become ignorant. Well, what causes us to become ignorant of God? When we start to harden our hearts towards Him. What happens is we start looking for the picture, and we can't see it anymore. The whole thing turns black. The beautiful picture's painted, and we're just going, I don't know where it is. The lights are off. I can't see it. I don't know where it's at. And so we can no longer even adore the beauty. And so what happens is we try so hard to explain this eternity that's in our hearts. We start coming up with ideas. And when we think, I know, I'm going to be wise. I'm going to start thinking, what is this eternity? And I'm going to sit down and think about it. And that's the progression that Paul actually goes in Romans through the next few chapters, is that he finishes this chapter by saying, and as they got darkened, they became immoral. And they started doing horrible things. They started lying and slandering and hating each other and hating God and disobeying their parents and cussing and pretty much doing a lot of stuff that all of us, even here in the church, do all the time. He says we end up, and that they ended up doing that. That humanity in general just started screwing up. And then he moves into chapter 2, and he starts speaking to people who are like, not me. I don't do those things. Because at the time in Rome, is that there were people in the Roman Empire and in the Greek culture that they saw, the huge just festivals of drunkenness and orgies and just the crazy things that went on, the people who would eat and eat and eat and then throw up and then go eat and eat and eat some more. And they're Romans, just completely secular Romans that went, dude, this whole mini gods thing is ridiculous. I'm not going to do that thing because look what it's causing. It's causing these people to go crazy. And they're like, we need morals in Rome. And we need to sit down and we need to talk about being good because we're not being good right now. That's not good, and we need to create morals. You see, atheism existed way before now. I think a lot of times we like to think that there's this new atheist attack that's on us, so let's rise up, Christian soldier, and go get them. But atheism has always existed. And the atheists on our big move to prove that you can have morality without having God, but that's already been done. That Paul turns in Romans 2 and is like, okay, fine. You're moral on your own conscience. You just go with it. And he's like, and you look at those people and you go, oh, those people aren't moral. But he's like, but do you always obey your conscience? Do you even stand up to your own standards? Probably not. But that's what happens, is as we try to explain away God. Something that I think it's ironic that it took God 6 days to create the world. It took Josh 7 days to do this painting. And that we sit down and we look at the messed up world, and like the Romans, we go, man, something's wrong with the world. There's not a very clear picture of what's going on. We need to fix it. We need to fix it. You know, it'd be really great if we came together and we kind of created our own thing, right? Let's come together and we're wise enough. We'll do it. We'll figure it out. We'll figure out the way to go. I think what we need, maybe we should chase after knowledge. That would be good. Just some knowledge right here. Yeah. I know. This whole chasing after morals thing, it's so ridiculous because, hey, there's no eternal life. No one can prove that to me. Eat, drink, and be merry, right? Let's just have fun. Let's just make what we can of life and go after it. Let's just go for it. Yeah, I think we'll do this. I think we'll create our own little painting here. Yeah, this is fun. I like it. I know, maybe we just need to be good people to everyone. You know? Make everyone happy. That's what we're missing. We're just not happy enough. That's what we need. Yeah. What happens is we take what God has done and we just start trying to paint our own thing, even though this is deciding to not work on me right now. And we just start inventing what we can. And so over here is maybe, I know, I like some of that's over there, but I like some of this other religion that's over here. That's fun. That's a good religion. And I like some of this about secular world. I'm just going to kind of create my own thing. I'm going to go with the cafeteria style, maybe some mashed potatoes and some macaroni Jesus, but I don't like everything, so maybe I'm going to go with the stroganoff Buddha today. Not so certain. And we end up with a painting that's just not as worthy as the one we started with, right? I talked about how God was a great artist, and I'm more of a stick figure kind of artist. And that's what happens. Is that Josh, he spent all this time working on this, but I decided I was going to make it better. And we've sort of done that with God. Is that we've claimed to be wise on our own. I don't need God. All I need is a paintbrush. I'll figure it out on my own. Yay. So nice. Oh, we like this. And the more we try, it just gets dirtier and uglier and less beautiful. Until, like Romans 8 says, pretty soon creation's groaning, going, oh my gosh, God, would you hurry up and wrap this story up? I'm waiting for redemption here. Romans 8 says that creation is actually moaning. It's groaning, waiting for the redemption because of the sin of man. But that's just it. I think that is the display right there of how we are. Because it's not just that. It's not that we didn't chase spirituality, okay? Let's keep going here. It's not that we just claim to be wise and it's done, but that we exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man. I like the translation. I think it's the New American Standard. They kind of struggled with immortal. It wasn't exactly immortal. And they said the incorruptible God for the corruptible man and just things of the earth. And I like that concept because although metal's a good thing, it won't last forever. It rusts. Although food is a good thing, it doesn't last forever. It eventually perishes or freezer burns. Depends how long you keep it. But what happened is we didn't give up spirituality. We just went for a lesser one. And what's even worse is that we worshiped and served. If you go down in Romans 1, it says that we started to worship and serve the Creator, or the created instead of the Creator. We started going around and going, look at how good I am. This is so good. Isn't this amazing? Didn't I do a good job? It's so abstract. Wait, you don't have the right angle. Do you see it from the side? The tragedy, the conflict of the artist. But then the beauty over here. I did such a beautiful thing. See, the fact is, everyone worships. Everyone. I said this before. But you end up worshiping what you desire most. And it's not God a lot of times. That, like they always say, look into your checkbook. Look what you're going after. Look what you're buying. That's probably what you purchase most. What do you spend your time and energy on? That's what you're worshiping. All worship is just like this strong like towards something. A good example of this is like if you've ever seen like a boy band concert Like the Jonas Brothers, you guys have heard of them maybe? They're this new Disney thing, came out of the biological engineering lab at Disney. They produced the next newest, greatest teen hit. And I was trying to get on YouTube and find a good video, but they don't have enough, mainly because the girls who are recording these videos are freaking out so much you can't even see what's going on. You just know it's the Jonas Brothers because it says it on the YouTube video. But if you want to see everyday worship, go to a Bronco game, right? What is worship supposed to look like? I mean, what does it look like in church? I mean, it might be a pathetic version of worship, but at least we're trying to worship God. It looks like this. Hands are up, right? And that's so weird when we come into church. It's so weird. Like, if you're new to church and you see people raising their hands, you're like, that is so odd. And like they're so into the clapping thing, like, oh yeah, I'm so happy I'm clapping. Go to a Bronco game. What happens, right? When Royal scores the touchdown or the conversion at the end of the game, everyone goes, woo, yeah! And they get excited, but except for instead of saying God, they're like, Royal, Cutler, I love them. I'm going to go get a new bumper sticker for my car. So it's not that we don't worship. It's just what we worship, what we chase after, what we desire, what we've given up. That's the true thing, what we've given up. See, the conclusion of this little section right here is that we have lost our ability to discern what is truly good. See, God, He desires for all of us to have a good God. That He looks around the universe and He goes, these people, they're made to worship. I put eternity on their hearts. Now I need to find for them a good God. If I only created a mirror big enough. It's Him. He is the good God. He is the incorruptible, the unperishable, the one that will last forever, that will not decay. But we've chosen lesser things. So if you guys want to know why are we so evil, why does mankind never get better? It's because we don't know what better is. We can only get so much better because we don't have the absolute view of what is truly good. So getting back to the discussion on this behavioral modification in high school, trying to make kids be good people. And we sit down and we give a sermon on how you shouldn't be doing this or how you shouldn't be doing that. We're basically putting Band-Aids on a gunshot wound. We've been shot straight to the heart, and we're going, I love Band-Aid brands, Band-Aids stick on me. But it's just gushing because the wound is huge, the wound is deep, and we're just like, surface problem, fix it, good. I mean, really, why should we be surprised when someone does something destructive? Or when we ourselves do something destructive? We've lost our concept of what is good, what is truly good. And as a result, this is where what we call sins comes into play. When that happened, so we ended in verse 23, verse 24. What did God do? Therefore, God shot fireballs from the heaven and destroyed everybody. Therefore, God sent a giant flood. Okay, He did that once, but He kept some people around. No. Therefore, God, as a result, gave them up to the lusts of their hearts, to impurity, to the dishonoring of their bodies among themselves. Down to verse 26. For this reason, because they exchanged the truth of God for a lie, God gave them up to dishonorable passions. And further down, since they didn't see it fit to acknowledge God, I'm in verse 28, God gave them up to a wrong mindset so that they would do what ought not to be done. He gave us up to it. This is very key. He didn't force us to do it. But he just said, fine, you're not going to love me? You want to paint your own pictures? I'll keep painting. I'm going to go ahead and let you, because I'm a God who loves you and wants you to make your own choice. I'm going to let you do it. See, he could have. God is all powerful. He could have forced us to love him. He could have went, you stop it and you love me now. And he could have taken everything away so that we couldn't sin and put us in a little padded room so we could just sit there and have just maybe like a picture of Jesus, like the creepy kind that most churches hang up. And we could have just been like, okay, I love Jesus. It's the only thing here to love. If I don't love him, I'm in trouble. God's forcing me to. But he didn't. He can't. He can, but he will not force us to love him. Instead, he handed us over. It's kind of like a parent. At some point, we're all at this age where hopefully, and if you're not, come forward and we'll pray for you, hopefully out of your parents' household and control, right? Maybe those Taco Bell commercials, the good-to-go ones, hit a little bit close to home there on your heart. But hopefully by now, your parents have let you go. They've let you out of the household. Some of you, they didn't even need to tell you. You're like, I'm out of here, poof, as soon as I can, gone, let's go, let's get out of here. Some of you were like, free rent, free meals, and it was more like kicking and screaming out of the house. But either way, your parents realized that if they kept you and forced you, at some point it